Hello, Bl'Artagnan here, with the Perfectum 5th Stratum Part 6, the Lufenia at the end of the latest Abyss Stratum, bringing a team of Y'shtola, Emperor, and Kurasame. This is Jack's Lost Chapter boss, who is probably one of the least restrictive Lufenias in history, which is kind of funny given how we just finished up with one of the most restrictive Lufenias, in my personal opinion. So I figured I'd have a little bit of fun with it, just kind of bring a more offbeat team, using a couple of my favorite units, Y'shtola, Emperor, and in this case Kurasame to fill the red sword requirement, with Y'shtola covering the yellow. It actually has the side benefit of these guys, their big gimmick being that if they go into that pollination stance and then you don't take a certain number of actions before they act, they wreck you. Y'shtola and Emperor are both really good at saying, no, hold on, you stay right there, I'll be right with you in a second. So that's what we're going to do here. Kurasame, meanwhile, will be here to amp our damage with his lovely Hyōrō debuff that we don't yet have access to as a call, and to cover the melee requirement for the orb. You'll also notice, before I get to that, as a quick note, housekeeping of sorts, I'm going to get a Slack message at some point during this recording, and I'm not going to tell you when. It'll be our fun little surprise. But for the sake of avoiding, doxing my coworkers or something, I tastefully obscured the message with a piece of fine art. The downside here is that the limitations on my phone's editing technology, it was such that I couldn't really pinpoint the exact point when the message happened. So I'm basically there's going to be a chunk of time when I'm just going to kind of plop that image over where it shows up, and it's going to leave eventually after. So I hope you enjoy that period and can appreciate the aesthetic choices I made in the process. Anyway, yeah, so now we're taking advantage of Y'shtola's turn manipulation, keep pushing the bosses back and making a lot of space. You'll see I have Leviathan there. My thinking was the bosses are speed down immune, but between Emperor and Kurasame we have a couple of unique speed down components, so I'd add Leviathan to that because this team at its core is about turn control. Not turn manipulation in the sense of like zero turning bosses or locking them down. There we go. Parked. But just making sure that we have our kind of fingers on the pulse of how the bosses are going to be acting so that we can line up things like dropping Emperor's trap and then battering him, and then before the trap expires, or especially if it's a ZX trap, reapplying it, something like that. You'll see here, we just got his EX. This is Emperor 101 type stuff, but I just wanted to explain the choice of Leviathan here. Is still an extremely good summon, even though I think right now some of the divine summons, and to a lesser extent just Odin, have stole its thunder a bit. As a side benefit, they did hit part of that pollination stance is that AoE HP attack, which triggers Leviathan's regen. That's nice. Now the one downside to this team in this fight is that we only have one source of consistent melee damage. Not gonna call abilities and stuff like that. I guess I could have brought Odin Summon for that. But the problem with that is we're heavily reliant on Kurasame to keep the orb frozen, which is of course appropriate and funny given that he's ice. And Kurasame isn't super duper fast. He's not slow, but he's of average speed. And he's got a pair of units next to him who are both high turn rate as well. So you'll see that B's orb is getting kind of low. And the orb doesn't go up when you hit them with melee, it freezes, which is a double-edged sword. It means that, you can't perpetually keep it up if you use, like an all melee team. But it also means we can do something goofy, like just have one melee unit and kind of cover the orb that way. That said, you'll see they just hit Kurasame with a big delay attack. Stuff like that is pretty stressful when it comes to managing an orb. Maybe not this orb in this fight, because these guys are honestly kind of pushovers, but it's just something to keep in mind. And I'm kind of stretching just a little bit, trying to give useful insight for a fight that really I can only assume you've already cleared this one. You're probably not watching this for the how to do it kind of info. I do appreciate them giving us a bit of a gimme fight after the Dullahan. That was again, that was a very restrictive and not terribly fun fight to go through, in my opinion. I know you can argue that fun is subjective. I would counterpoint that with fun is subjective, but the number of different ways to have fun that fight says you can't do is objectively less fun than other fights by comparison. I think there's kind of a critical mass at which it's like, okay, technically yes, I can't say that nobody is going to enjoy this fight. I'm sure there are people who did. In fact, I know for a fact people did, because at least one person commented and said, I'd like the fight, and that's your prerogative. If you like the fight, all more power to you. All I'm saying is I think the number of ways that you enjoy playing the game, at least mechanically, a lot of those ways were cut off by the last fight. Don't know if that makes sense. I guess I was just trying to follow up on some of my thoughts from that fight. Somewhat ironically, this fight has almost the exact opposite problem, that you basically throw any team together and get through the fight so long as you have like a melee damage dealer. It almost goes kind of too hard in that other direction. So maybe I don't know if Jack's bosses were the ones I would have like chosen for this if I was designing it, but I mean, I guess if you want to kind of passively sell Ignis, they have some annoying debuffs that aren't game ending. They have, he does melee damage and he takes consecutive turns, which can be useful for stalling out their pollen phase, so it works. It'll do. And I know there are kind of complaints about Abyss fights always being reprints, and I figure, I mean, there's something to that, I guess. I suppose I don't want the. I enjoy playing this game and don't want its available resources to outstrip or to get outstripped by the demands being put on it. And so, if for something extra like this they're going to throw recycle a fight, I'll be like, okay, whatever, that's fine. I like the idea that I think Necklord said in Black Cloud's last stream. He mentioned the idea of them using raid bosses or kind of temporary bosses who we haven't seen since then as Abyss boss fights. I thought that was a great idea. Yeah, not too much. At the end of the day, it's just an opinion. I think that's the thing about this game. I think a lot of people who play it have very strong opinions about it. Part of that's because it's the internet and everyone has very strong opinions on the internet. I think another part of it is just we enjoy the game a lot and are passionate about it because we enjoy it so much, which is kind of awesome in its own way. The fact that it often creates a bit of infighting, toxicity, and arguing is not the greatest, but I guess it's a double-edged sword. A couple of decisions I made in the game that I just talked over. I went into the summon when I did because they got the shield, and I wanted to make sure we can get rid of the shield and freeze the orb with Kurasame before it counted down too much. As you can see, we're chunking these guys with the Hope Call, the Jack Call. Now he Shoals Burst. I really I underestimated how quickly I'd blow these guys up once I pulled the trigger on these things. That's kind of my fault. I guess I expected this to be a little more challenging than it was. After the last fight, kind of getting a bit gun shy. But yeah, so I did the summon there, and with the Shtola's Burst rotation, we went into it with 3 stacks. They unbroke right at the right time that we could use Flatus Misery to break them, then unbreak them immediately with Scion's Holy, then Stone, EX Stone for 2 delays. I think those are the only mechanical choices that really got made for this fight for the most part. A lot of it's pretty self-explanatory. Again, it's not a hard fight, and I highly doubt you're watching this video for the skinny on how to get through it. Hopefully you found what you did watch it for, and assuming that's, I don't know, entertainment or something, boredom. But in any case, there we go. Pretty fun team. I love these characters. I appreciate you sticking with me to watch it to the end. And yeah, the usual thing. Like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Adios.